Great. So thank you everyone for spending what I'm sure is a busy night with us here. We hope we'll be able to share some information that you guys find beneficial about some new electric heating technologies that are out there on the market. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Hillary Knox. I'm the VP of Member Experience. And very shortly, I'm going to be handing it over to John Kenny and Robin Henry, who are our energy management advisors and who help our members with all things electrification and energy related. Just a few housekeeping matters before we get started. Just so you know that all the registrants for this webinar will be receiving an email tomorrow with a link to the recording and also to the slide deck. So no need to frantically keep notes. We will make sure to send you all the materials afterwards for easy reference. Also, so you know, we will have a Q&A section at the end of the presentation. At the bottom of your display, you should see a Q&A function. And what you can do is anytime during the presentation, go ahead and feel free to enter in your questions there. And when we get to the session at the end, we will go through those one at a time. And you are all on mute just for quality experience of all participants. So the only way to ask a question is to go ahead and type it into that Q&A section. If you're having any issues and for some reason your Q&A button is not working, you can also feel free to email me. My email is hknox, HKNOX @lpea.coop. And you can email me your questions there or any issues you may be having. So without further ado, I will just go ahead and hand the floor over to John Kenny. John.
Cool. So here's our agenda, what we're going to be talking about tonight. So yeah, heavy heat pump focus, but we'll get into some other stuff too. So reducing heating load and indoor air quality, so getting your home ready for new heating systems. We'll talk a little bit about some electric heating options that are out there, and then we're just going to deep dive into heat pumps and spend a lot of time talking about that, just because it's kind of the new thing, the exciting thing, and really the best option we have out there. So we'll look at cost comparisons, rebates and tax incentives that are available to help pay for these systems. And then we'll also talk about exactly how you get started on a system like this. And then we'll open it up to a pretty long Q&A session just to make sure we can answer all the questions from you all out there. So Hillary, if you want to bump a slide there. You can bump a slide, yeah. So beneficial electrification is a term we've been throwing around a lot. And really what it is at the end of the day is we want to get away from fuels like gasoline, propane, natural gas, and switch over to electric, as we're starting to bring more renewables onto the grid, lower that carbon footprint. We get a lot of benefits out of something like that. So what is beneficial electrification? It's fuel switching. So getting away from all the fuels out there and switching to electric. But we want to do this in a responsible way. So we want to make sure that it's saving our membership money. So, if it's super expensive, it doesn't make sense financially, we're not going to promote that. We're not going to do it. And then also we want to make sure that it is benefiting the environment and reducing greenhouse gas, things like that. So, if we can do something that is cheap, it's going to save energy, but it's going to, negatively affect the environment. It's not something we want to promote. And then a big part of this too is fostering a more robust and resilient power grid. So that's just reliability across our grid. If we're starting to bring on renewables or new technologies like heat pumps or heat pump water heaters, and they're not good for the grid, and you're seeing like blackouts and brownouts and things like that, that's not something we want to promote either. So we want to make sure that we're doing all three of these things without negatively affecting something else. So Hillary, if you want to bump a slide forward for us. And then, so what are the perks? Kind of what are the benefits of electrification? Again, it's saving you money. It's better indoor air quality because we're not having noxious off-gassing VOCs and off-gassing, things like that. It's better for the environment, so we're lowering our carbon footprint and greenhouse gas emissions. And then it's also going to be better for our grid. So doing things like load shifting and resiliency and things like that are better for the grid as well. So if you want to bump a slide, Hillary. Yeah, so I'm going to hand it over to Robin Henry here to talk kind of building science. And this is really how do you get your home ready for a new heating system or a changing heating system. So Robin, you want to take it away?
Yeah, appreciate it, John. Next slide, please. Yeah, so just right off the bat, wanted to get a glossary here, just so it won't make sense on the front end as much, but you can circle back and review this stuff. So, HSPF, SEER, EER, those are all efficiency ratings for heat pumps. Generally, the higher the number, well, always the higher the number, the better off you are. And one big number I want y'all to take away with this is the 3.412 BTUs per watt. So you can use that for anything, lighting, electric resistance heat, just anything, and you can do that math to convert and get a heat unit out of it. So just wanted to get this on here. Y'all can circle back and kind of review that to make sense of some other info that we're going to be going over. Hillary, next slide, please. So how to get started, energy efficiency first, right? So you want to trim the fat, so to speak. You want to cut down on your existing base load of your house. That's the low hanging fruit. You just want to be using less power right off the bat. And some things to do are, changing your any remaining LED light bulbs and anything like that. One good thing right off the bat too is just get an energy audit. And then you got a detailed rundown of what all your existing equipment is, what all your baseline, situations are, and then you can kind of come up with a game plan on how best to pursue upgrades in order of priority. So moving on to, again, the low-hanging fruit, pipe insulation, faucet aerators, anything to kind of cut down on the easy stuff. And then rolling into winter here, limit the heat generating plug load. So that would be like your standard kind of electric resistance heaters, like oil fill radiators, fans, things like that. And another one being heat tape. So you want to try to limit that as much as you can. You don't want to plug it in and forget and leave that thing rocking and rolling all winter long. That will hit your bill, and you will notice. Passive solar, to heat, keep sun out, heat in, all that good stuff, and keeping things cool. Another good thing too is just if your insulation, if you don't even know if your house is old, circle back, stick your head in the attic, see what's going on up there, because you could probably stand to benefit from that as well. So next slide. So once you start air sealing your house and tightening up things a lot, you still want a healthy amount of airflow, but you want to do it responsibly and efficiently. So you want to incorporate mechanical ventilation. Right here pictured is, I don't know if that's a HRV or ERV, I can't remember. They look similar. There's just a difference in the core, but that way you can get the right amount of airflow coming in and out of your house. And then the next slide, please. So on the right, that image on the right there, that's kind of like just a cut through cross section with the cover off. So the way those things work, you're exhausting conditioned air from inside your house, going outside, bringing in, unconditioned air from outside, some fresh air. And then that's where the magic happens in the middle there. You got a heat exchanger. So your indoor air is conditioning the incoming outdoor air. So you're not just pumping heat out and wasting energy, you're recapturing that, but still getting the benefit of all the fresh air. And then a little quick schematic there on the left, kind of just outlining what that would look like within your house. And then the next slide. So running into that, I will hand it back over to John, and he will cover some of your standard electric resistance heating options.
Yeah, so we want to give mention to the other options that are out there, right? We said we're going to focus on heat pumps, but there is other stuff out there, and we'll kind of explain why heat pumps are so great, and really why these other options are really just not options anymore. So other things you can do, baseboard heating, plug-in heaters. This is all working off of just resistance electric. And Robin gave mention to that 3.14 number before. That's 100% efficiency. That's 1 unit of energy in, 1 unit of energy of heat back out. We can do a lot better with that with some other technologies, and that's really why some of these are so expensive to run, is they're just not doing a whole lot for us. So we also have, some of you might have electric boilers. forced air furnaces out there, some of those older systems, ducted systems, where you might have in-floor heating, something like that. So, radiant heaters, and then you have ETS, so a program we still have here, and we have rebates available for electrical thermal storage. We'll jump into and explain what that is a little bit, but really the meat of this is going to be heat pumps. So we're going to kind of do a deep dive into that and hopefully get some questions out of that as well. Yeah, so Rob, you want to take it away and talk a little bit about ETS?
Yeah, so this is a really good photo right here with the kind of another cross section. You get to have the cover removed, you get to see what's going on. So the ETS, the way they work, it's still at its core electric resistance heat, right? But then they're heating these ceramic bricks, which can retain that heat for a really long time. And then as needed, it's got a fan here to blow the heated air off of the bricks and distribute that. And so the whole workaround with that is taking advantage of on the next slide, please, our time of use rate. So the way these heaters work is that they will charge themselves off peak on that bottom little bar graph there. So they'll charge themselves off peak and then use the heat whenever they need to. So they're taking advantage of that 6 cents a kilowatt hour versus the 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And then you can still utilize that heat. And then if you do switch to that rate, you can kind of shift your loads accordingly. So like not running your laundry or your dryer rather, or any, big electric loads during peak. And then you can, by playing that accordingly, you can really save money. So then on to the next slide, please. So then, then I will hand it off to John to go over the heat pumps.
Yeah, so we're going to dive into heat pumps, and we're going to start with a little bit of science here. So try not to glaze over too much, but this is really how they work, and it's important to understand this because it seems like magic otherwise. And what we really have here is, a mini split system. So we'll look at these a little bit more in detail coming up. But you've got essentially an outdoor unit and an indoor unit, and in between them is just a refrigerant line. So you've got typically a 410 refrigerant flowing through each of those. And what it's doing is at that outdoor unit, it's got a big coil system in there, a bunch of really fine fins, and that outdoor air is pushed through there by a fan on that outdoor unit. All the heat is taken out of the air, and we can actually do this in the middle of winter down into -25, -30 degrees. There's still little bits of heat in the air that we can take, pass into that coil assembly, and all that little bit of heat gets into our refrigerant. That refrigerant then passes through a compressor that you see here. It's going to increase its pressure, increase its temperature. It's going to turn that into a gas, actually, pass that into your home, into the indoor unit there, where it goes into another coil assembly, heats up that coil assembly. Now you have room air passing through that coil and into your home. That really warm refrigerant has lost a little bit of its heat. It goes back out, goes into an expansion valve where it cools down, it turns back into a liquid, and now we start this whole process over again where we're just collecting little bits of heat out of the air. And the really cool thing about a heat pump, and really why we're pushing these things, is they do heating and cooling. So you can see that the reversing valve there can actually take this whole process and turn it around. So now we're taking heat from inside the home, passing into that refrigerant, and outside into the air. And really, that's why we're able to see such high efficiencies with these systems, is that we're not creating so much heat inside of here like you have with a traditional heating system, but we're actually moving heat from one place to another. And that's really kind of the magic of a heat pump right now. Not so much magic, but just some great science. So Hillary, if you want to bump forward, yeah. So heat pump myths. So, heat pumps, they've been around for a really long time, but they've only kind of just made their way into our territory and into the mountains where it's cold, it's dry, it's high altitude, thin air. And only really in the past 3 or 4 years are we comfortable to say, yep, these will work up here. And we're just seeing the efficiencies every single year go up and up. So what are some of the myths that we see out of this? Some of the things that we hear out there. The biggest, the benefits here. So improved air quality and safety. We're not having to combust a gas in there and having VOCs and other noxious gases into the home. We also have zonal control and comfort. So each, we'll take a look at these mini splits coming up here, but instead of just saying, oh, I want my whole home to be 72 degrees, we can now take a bedroom and say, I want this to be 68. I want the other bedroom to be 70. I want my main living space to be, 68 degrees, and get a little bit extra savings out of that. Like I mentioned, heat pumps work in both directions. So we get heating and cooling out of the system. It's getting warmer here. We start to get, 90 plus degrees in June. It's nice to be able to turn that cooling on for a little bit of time. And then smoke management, as we start to have wildfire smoke blow through the area, typically a lot of us open our windows at night to let that air in. Well, if it's smoky, that can, lead to kind of some respiratory problems. So we're able to shut those windows down, run the heat pump, and get some cooling out of that in the summer during the fire season. So what are some of the myths that we've actually heard on this? So the biggest one we hear out there is that they're not efficient in cold temperatures, or that they don't work in the cold, that they're not going to work here. And that's just not true. I mean, flat out, there are systems out there that will do down to, negative 25, negative 30 degrees, temperatures we don't see here. And they'll continue to work, and they'll continue to carry the full heating load of a home. Really just comes down to properly sizing that system. Needing backup. We're still seeing a lot of systems going in with propane or natural gas backup on them, with electric backup on them. And really, we're finding that if we size the system appropriately, that we don't need a backup system on that the heat pump will carry that full load there. We hear that they don't work at altitude. It's thin air, right? It doesn't hold a lot of specific heat. So how does it work? Well, it's fine. Yeah, we've seen installations up at 10,000 plus feet, and they're working just fine. Again, it's all about sizing that system out appropriately. We hear that they only work in newer homes. It has to be super insulated and super sealed. And while that's great, that'll take that overhead on the heating load down and save you some money. So it's a really good thing to do. Don't necessarily have to do that. Again, we want to size that system appropriately for the needs of that home, and we know it's going to work. We hear that they need to be turned down at night to save energy, and that's not necessarily true. With heat pumps, they actually work most efficiently if we can just keep that temperature about the same within 2, 3, 4 degrees, and just let the system work. They don't want to be diving up and down on temperature. They like to be kept the same, and that goes through the night too. We can keep it about the same temperature. We also hear they require a lot of maintenance, and that's just not true. It's about the same as a typical AC system. You just have to rinse out a reusable filter every once in a while, and every couple of years have a tech come out and just make sure that the refrigerant lines and things like that are all charged up. So pretty low in the maintenance as well. So next slide, we'll kind of look at the outdoor units. So two components that we mentioned are outdoor unit and indoor unit. So I'm just going to give a quick mention to the two different scenarios we see out there. And all heat pump systems are going to have this thing in common, and that is the outdoor unit. You may have one, you may have more than one, but all of these systems will have just an outdoor unit connected to one or more indoor units. And we've got a couple different ways to run these. We don't see too many of them, but on the right-hand side is a ground source heat pump. So these are higher cost, but they also come with an efficiency benefit. It doesn't take more than a couple meters down into the earth, where it holds about 50 or 60 degrees year round, no matter what the air temperature is. So you can get a lot of great heating and cooling out of a system if we can just use the ground as our source. And then what we're seeing more of is almost exclusively air source heat pumps. And so if we can just use the heat out of the air, even in the middle of the winter, this is lower cost. So we're not having to do trenching. There's not all the additional labor and material for having to run a ground loop. We can just use the air as our source here. That efficiency does drop off in the winter, but again, if we're appropriately sizing these systems, they will work to carry the full heating load there. So I'm going to hand it over to Robin here. He's going to kind of talk about the specifics of the indoor units and all the options you have out there.
Yeah, so again, these are the air source varieties of these. Typically, I would say the vast majority of what we're seeing is the mini split ductless there, but you can do a central air handler, forced air, application. So just pulling a furnace and AC, furnace and or AC unit out, sticking in a heat pump, and then using your existing ductwork, or even with new construction, same thing with the right size ducting, and they'll do the whole heating load as well. But as far as what we're seeing, and typically things getting retrofitted into existing housing, you're going to see a lot of those mini split ductless units, and you've probably already seen them around your neighborhood. Your friends or family or coworkers might have some that they're talking about. That's typically what you're going to be seeing. Ducted mini splits, slim ducts, that's kind of a bit of a hybrid between the mini splits and then the big central air handler. Those are a little bit of the newer applications. Those are kind of still coming online. You're going to see a little bit of different hardware from manufacturer to manufacturer, but that is also another option. And then the hydronic boiler style, like air to water, is another name you might hear for them. That is where it's just kind of a boiler replacement. It heats up the water to pump through the lines in the system, and will heat your home that way. It does work differently than your standard propane or natural gas boiler, in that the system loops have to be kind of sized a little bit differently. So some considerations there, but another good application as well. So next slide, please. So circling back to the mini splits, these are the photoed here. These are some of the indoor unit applications. That one kind of center right, that's the one that's going to be the most common, but then you're starting to see center left, those kind of recessed cassettes coming online. Those are pretty cool because, aesthetically, all you're seeing is like that white grill pattern, right? So it's kind of recessed into the ceiling, mostly flush, with the fins kind of hanging down. So kind of a common enough objection with people that aren't used to the tech. They're new to heat pumps. They're seeing these indoor units, these heads on the wall, and just saying, no way, that does not look good. I don't want to see it in the house. So that indoor cassette, or that recessed cassette, is another good option to kind of hedge your bets. There is some, remodel considerations there to get that in there, but nothing that can't be done. Some of the slim ducts up top there, and then on the bottom, some kind of wall units where you can get those mounted down lower on the floor. If you just had some objections or just, aesthetics or architecture to where those upper units won't work, different units for down lower to switch that up a bit. So plenty of different options to kind of accommodate your needs and different things you're going for there. So next slide, please. Circling back to the ducted forced air, that's the outside unit. So they're a little bit different looking than the mini split outside units. And then the interior unit that would just kind of go right, where a furnace was, or just right in the plenum to, supply the heating and cooling there throughout your system. This can be done with a retrofit option, but better suited for new construction when you can appropriately size the ductwork. The heat pumps, they work by moving more air. So it's not as hot, but they're moving more air just kind of constantly. So to that end, they need typically larger size ductwork compared to your traditional forced air furnaces. So just some considerations with the design there. Next slide, please. Again, the hydronic boiler kind of air to water application. So you can kind of see here, it's a little overkill, but honestly, that's what they're going for, compared to your traditional, in-floor system where the loops are, 8 inches or so apart. These guys are, half that, or even more so with how the loops are spread. The lines, the heat coming out of the heat pump boilers are 120 to 130 degrees. So in order to deliver that heat, you need tighter loops to get that heat where you need it. So just nothing that can't be done, just some design considerations and kind of new tech coming online. One thing, again, circling back to retrofit options, they flat out will not work with the radiant baseboard style. the temperatures just won't get hot enough. They're not designed to do that. Whereas boilers, they're sending 160, 170 degree water, or glycol mixture, what have you, through those radiators to deliver that heat. And again, if you got 130 degree temperatures that you're trying to get through there to heat a home, you're just not going to see that. So if you had a boiler, traditional boiler, and you wanted to go with heat pumps, the ductless mini splits would be a better retrofit option for you. And next slide, please. So I will hand it back over to John, and he can kind of go over some options for you.
Yeah, so we kind of want to break this down of just kind of explaining that it doesn't necessarily have to be that you're going to rip out your entire heating system and then put a new system in. There's a lot of other options here and things you can do with a heat pump that are not just an entire whole home retrofit. So yeah, we can do that complete replacement. And if you have in-floor, if you have radiators, you have a ducted system, one thing you can do is just abandon those existing systems and go to something like a mini split and just redo the whole system with just mini splits. You can keep that in-floor like Robin mentioned. You can keep the ducted system, but yeah, that's an option that's out there. We can also supplement an existing system. So if you have a gas furnace that you're fairly happy with, but maybe you just want to have that main space heated with a heat pump and carry most of the load through the more efficient heat pump. But then maybe once it starts to drop temperature outside, we can switch it over to that gas furnace. So we can kind of buddy those systems up and have them play off of one another so that you're always selecting the most efficient system for the given temperature and needs of the home. And then something that we're seeing more and more of is this zonal supplement. So, again, if you have an existing heating system in place, but maybe you've got a back bedroom that runs cold, or it's kind of drafty in a living room and kitchen, and you just want to add heat pumps into some of those smaller locations, you can certainly do that. You can get the heat pumps in a one or more zones, so one or more heads up on a wall to say, we want to do a couple bedrooms, or we want to do 3 rooms, or just one. And that way that space is heated with a heat pump, and the rest of the home just is carried by the typical heating system that you have in place. So lots of options, and we're always open to kind of talking through what you have in your home and what you can do to bring a heat pump in there. So heat pump retrofit feasibility. So we just want to call out a couple things here that you need to keep an eye out for when you are considering how a heat pump might work for your home and what you have already installed there. So when you have a boiler or radiant in-floor, it can work, but like Robin mentioned, that output temperature on the heat pump system maxes out about at 130, where your existing system may be a 150 or 160 design temp. So really just getting in contact with a contractor to find out exactly what's in place there and whether a heat pump will work for it. Forced air systems, like Robin mentioned, better suited for new construction. If we get a lot of tight ducts with a lot of turns in them, it's going to be hard for that heat pump to push an effective amount of air, effective volume of air out, given that lower output temperature. So again, it's, engage a contractor, have them come out and look at your existing system to find out if it's going to work or not. And then mini splits. So we saw kind of the ceiling recessed, or the wall mount, or the low wall mount. Those are all really great options. And that's really where we're seeing the lowest upfront cost, and it's the most efficient. So it's going to be the least costly to run in the long term. So yeah, mini splits are really kind of the best option out there right now. But it's certainly, if you want to reuse your existing system, or you just like in-floor or like a ducted system, plenty of options out there for you to choose from. And then those recessed cassettes are pretty nifty. They're pretty nice and clean. So if you can modify the ceilings a little bit, make sure that it's going to fit inside that plenum or your crawl space, or the attic that you have up there. That's really what you want to look out for. So if you want to go one more slide forward. So I'm going to hand it over to Rob, and he's going to kind of talk through the financials of the whole situation and some of the incentives and things like that are out there.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so we got our numbers on the left here of what you can expect to kind of pay to replace the system. So baseboard electric is going to be, you know, the lowest upfront cost. And that's why you saw a lot of them getting installed back in the 80s, because they were cheap to install. Electric wasn't that expensive. You know, ETS, $9,000. And this is also based on, you know, approximately like a 1,500 square foot house in the territory here, you know, with our environment. And then to that end too, you know, 13.5 on a heat pump install for the whole house. Propane furnace, natural gas furnace, those are going, you know, with a new replacement in there. So around 11, and that's, you know, very depending on your setup and all that good stuff. But middle column there, you got the rebates. So the ETS is going to have, you know, approximately $700 rebate for that size system, and then $3,500 for the heat pump. So there's definitely significant rebate to kind of recoup your costs there on the back end than the yearly operating expense. So you can kind of see in this nice graph over here to the right really illustrates what you can expect using local, you know, real numbers from the territory here of what you can expect to pay to heat that, you know, $1,500 or 15 square foot house. So, you know, pretty much $1,700 for baseboard electric. No surprise there, that's real expensive. Anybody who's had a system like that just knows those things are just painful to maintain and operate and pay the bill for ultimately. And this year, propane furnace has jumped several $100s with the price increases and, you know, the price volatility. Anybody who's had to fill a tank in the middle of winter knows it is not fun to pay that bill. So right on par with baseboard electric at this point. And then the big one is natural gas. So the price for natural gas went up this past summer, and then that kind of put it right on par with what it costs to run a heat pump. So now you got heat pumps neck and neck with natural gas furnaces, which wasn't historically the case. They were slightly higher when natural gas was cheaper, but now boom, they're right there. So it's even competitive with natural gas. And then, you know, if you're taking again into circling back to talking about duct losses, you know, things like that, not having zonal controls, you can even bump that number up higher, or the, you know, the price difference between the heat pumps and the natural gas to make heat pumps look even more attractive. So if I could go to the next slide, please. So we got the rebates and incentives here for heat pumps, and, you know, the size of the amount of the rebate is going to vary depending on the size of the system, right? So we got this breakdown here with some minimal efficiencies we want to see to even qualify. And then it's not that hard to go a little bit beyond that and get additional rebate dollars to get a more efficient system, which, you know, I'll pretty strongly encourage anybody to pursue those cold climate heat pumps. And you can see, you know, the increase in the rebate there, you know, and then some ETS rebate breakdown. Again, you know, the ground source heat pumps, we're not seeing many of those installs going on, but there is rebate dollars for it. And then just a quick footnote down here for the cold climate certification. We want to see that minimum HSPF rating and the SEER rating, and then also a variable speed compressor. And what that means is those things can kind of ramp up, ramp down as needed. So it's not just off, on, off, on. They're just doing what they got to do. And then that's way more efficient. And then on the right here, we'll just gloss over real quick, but that's a heat pump hot water heater. Those things are really taking off there as well. So instead of heating the air to condition your home, you got a heat pump there on top of that water heater to heat water. And those are way, way, way more efficient than anything else out there. So just wanted to put a plug in for that real quick. Next slide, please. And a little bit more detail on the ETS rebates. Also, you know, $500 all electric new construction rebate to help the switch there, and a couple more you know, rebate amounts here for timers, things like that. There's also, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So if you do have some time and interest, go to that link. We got tons of rebates for, you know, e-bikes, outdoor equipment. I mean, all kinds of stuff. If it has to do with electricity and being efficient, chances are there's a rebate for it. So appliances and all that good stuff. Next slide, please. We're getting asked about this more and more. The Inflation Reduction Act coming out, Hope for Homes, a couple of new bills coming out, all having to do with energy efficiency and some rebate dollars to help offset the costs. for pursuing those upgrades. So it's really, it just passed. We know what rebate amounts are going to be. We know loosely how it's going to shake out. There's some other ones with income qualifications and things like that. The big mystery right now is how the funding is going to get allocated and distributed through the state level. So that's just kind of on a hold pattern for right now. But the best resource I've seen so far is this link in here. And then that's kind of a really good breakdown, a really good coherent breakdown of like, hey, this is the bill, this is how it's working. And, kind of going into a little bit more detail while not being too overwhelming. So I'd recommend checking that link out. Next slide, please. And I will hand it back over to John. He can kind of get into the nitty gritty a little bit more with the ratings and all that stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So we just want to give a quick mention to, we've got these requirements on our programs for what qualifies or what doesn't for rebate eligibility. And the things that we're looking for, are the two big ones, SEER and HSPF. So the seasonal energy efficiency rating and the heating season performance factor. And typically these things are going to be found on a spec sheet. So you should have this available online, or it came with your heat pump system, or your contractor can provide it. And we've just kind of pointed out here on the right-hand side, you'll see the SEER rating and the HSPF. This system here is actually pretty incredible. SEER of 30 and an HSPF of 15. Our program requirements are only 16 and 10. So this thing is pretty incredible. This is kind of the latest and greatest that's out there for a single zone. And we'll take a look at the next one here of kind of what that looks like in the real world. So the other thing that you'll see is we require two stages or variable speed. And if you can't find that terminology on your spec sheet, as soon as you see DC or just inverter driven, that's variable speed. So you'll see it as variable speed or inverter driven, and it's going to qualify from that. Almost all the systems now, if they are highly rated, they're going to be variable speed motors in there. That's really how they're getting these efficiencies like this. So next slide here, please. And so we just wanted to give a mention to this as well. So this is something you all can look at and kind of figure out, will the heat pump that you're looking at carry a full heating load down into some of these really cold temperatures that you might be seeing up at high altitude. And I just wanted to point out on this one, so this system is rated for 9,000 BTU. We can get this thing down into something like negative, I think this one goes down to negative 26 degrees. Yeah, negative 26 degrees Fahrenheit. And we're still getting the full output of this system. So when people tell you that heat pumps don't work in the cold, this is a really great chart to take a look at and see, is my system actually going to work when it gets really cold out there? So next slide, please. And then the last requirement that we have on our program is that you have an AHRI RE certification on your heat pump system. HRI RE just kind of is a third-party body, and they just certify the performance on a lot of heat pump systems to make sure that what the manufacturer is stating is actually going to be true when it makes its way into the field. And so we want to see that it's been through this testing, that the manufacturer has listed this there, and it's a legit product. That we're having quality installs going on out there. So we can hit the next slide here, and just kind of talking through how to get started on these systems. So the best advice we can give here is if you're looking at electric boiler or baseboard, again, we want to kind of steer you away from that, but HVAC contractors, plumbers, electricians, all have a hand in doing that. They'll typically come out for a system sizing, do the installation, and then we can get a rebate on some of those systems. ETS, the kind of main program that we run out here, we've had for about 30 years now. The best way to get started on this is either talk to us and we can get you a little bit of information on what'll work for your home. But the manufacturer, Steffes, has partnered with Durango Electric Services for the entire territory, so they'll work in Durango or Pagosa, and what they'll do is, if you have a preferred electrician, they can sell those parts, but they'll also do new installations, service calls, things like that. They'll come out, do a system sizing for you, get you a quote, make sure it all works out. They'll do the installation. They'll set up all the controls for you. And then the rebate will come over to us. We can run the rebate. And then we want to make sure that we get you on that time of use program as well. Like Robin mentioned, that whole system is works out for time of use. So it's pretty crucial that we get you changed over on the rate class there. And then for heat pumps, best thing to do is get in touch with an HVAC contractor. And we actually have a list up on our website of quality install contractors who have been through a short training for us, just so that they understand what the requirements are out here and what we want to see installed as far as, higher performance systems, so that, we know that you as a member are going to be taken care of and that you're going to get a system that's going to work out for you for a long time here. They'll come out and do something called a manual J, or they should be doing a manual J. And that's just a study of the home. So square footage, insulation values, windows, all that stuff to come up with a system size that's, very accurate. We don't want to use a whole lot of rules of thumb here and just estimate. We want to make sure that we're sizing it appropriately, that's not under or oversized, and that we get the right system for you. And then, so they'll select a system for you, get you a quote. They can do that installation. And then once your installation is complete, that's when you'll go ahead and apply for the rebate with us. So that's kind of how to get started. Some good resources to point you towards. Our website is constantly changing, especially in the next year, as some of the Interest Rate Reduction Act and all these other things are going to come on board. Is keep checking in with our website. We've got some great info up there. And then loveelectric.org is another great site that has information on all things electrification up there. And then NEEP, this is the Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership. On their website is a list of cold climate rated heat pumps. So they've got their own criteria. You can go on there. If someone's saying, hey, buy this heat pump, go on there, make sure it's listed on the NEEP website, so that you know that it's gonna work in our environment out here. So those are all great resources you can kind of check out. Or, as usual, give us a call. Our energy management team is always here to talk through this stuff. You can stop in at one of the offices or just give us a call, email us. But we love to kind of talk through this stuff with you all and just answer any questions you might have. And then we can connect you with all the good resources and tools that are out there. So that's kind of it for our presentation. I think, Hillary, if you want to kind of open it up to questions here.
Yeah, so just a reminder to folks, there's the Q&A button at the bottom. We already have a number of great questions submitted, but please feel free to submit more if you're curious. So I'll just start up at the top here. There's a question on, for new residential construction, can a whole house humidifier be incorporated into a heat pump system?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so for the ducted ones, there's not any that I'm aware of as far as like the mini split applications. They will actually slightly dehumidify, which may not be of interest to you, but with the plenum, you can kind of stack a humidifier in there as well. And it looks like you had another question as far as to Kathy, how you keep smaller areas of your home warm and all that stuff. We kind of touched on that a little bit, but wanted to circle back. That's where the heat pump mini splits are great, because that zonal control and retrofit as well. So if it's like you're going in after the fact, you just want to heat one room or what have you, those mini splits are great options. Outside unit, indoor unit on the wall, and then you can independently heat and cool that one spot that you spoke of.
Great. Here's another question from John. What happens to the heating system if there's a power outage? I have an old-fashioned gas furnace and a duct system under my mobile home. What would it take to retrofit a heat pump system in my home? And are there any deals or pilot programs for heat pumps between LPA and 4Core in the future?
Yeah, I can grab this one. So we've asked this a lot. What happens if the power goes out? If I go all electric and the power goes out, what happens? If the power goes out and you have a gas furnace or any other heating source, those all have blowers behind them and controls. They're all going to go down. So we generally like to say that our power outages are pretty rare and they're pretty short, but they do happen. And so it is good to have either a wood burning stove so you have heat, a generator so you continue to have power, or what we're starting to move towards now is battery storage. So I think in the next year here you're going to see some movement out of us on promoting the battery storage for your home that'll act just like a generator and do a lot more for you. And then, yeah, heating options for a mobile. I'm just trying to find the question. I'm sorry.
It's from John Egan. So, hey, John.
Hey, John. Yeah, so gas furnace. So again, we talked about, you can continue to use that ductwork if it'll work and you like ductwork, but really the mini split advantage here is higher efficiency, and we can zone that thing out. So instead of just one temperature all over the place, you can take that bedroom and say, I want this temperature at this time of day, and this temperature at another part of the day, and completely have a different schedule for your main living space. And that's where we're starting to see additional savings and things like that as well. So I would say just, have a contractor come out and evaluate the different options there, get a couple quotes on either the, replacement of the furnace or the mini splits. And then deals or pilot programs for that. I hope so. I hope we're moving that direction. The Interest Rate Reduction Act is going to bring a lot of funds towards heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, energy efficiency in general, energy audits, all these things. And a lot of the programs will also be focused towards low to moderate income individuals out there. So I think we will start to see these programs come along. It's just, it's just a matter of time. So we'll continue to keep you in the loop as things come along.
Great. I'm going to jump around just a little bit here to cover some different topics. Can you discuss installation costs? I had someone come to my 1,400 square foot house and propose putting in numerous mini splits for about $5,000 each.
Yeah, I mean, so this is the downside of heat pumps is the upfront cost. And, what we tell people, I think, is on a 1,500 square foot home, be prepared for something around a $10,000 price tag. It could go up, could go down. We always want you to get 2-3 different quotes because you'll see some pretty big variance there. But again, the Interest Rate Reduction Act, the IRA, is going to change this in a big way. There's going to be tax incentives and rebates available from the federal government on top of what we're already offering. And they're going to start leveraging the Defense Production Act for heat pumps. So I think you're going to see the price of these systems come down in the next year as well. So while it might be kind of a big price tag right now, I think that changes here in the next year. And even if you're interested in doing it today, I think it's still a great investment that pays off for you pretty quickly. So I wouldn't say hold out or anything, but certainly look for more information from us here in the next year on these things.
And Hillary, before we move on, I kind of thought to put a plug in real quick for LPEA's on-bill financing to kind of help spread that cost out. So if someone, for instance, someone was interested, X amount of money for the install, X amount of dollars for the rebate, you can apply and get approved to add that cost of that system to your LPEA bill, and then you can spread that cost out just as a finance vehicle. That's also a good option if dropping 10 or 15 grand is a little hard to do, which is not easy for a lot of us.
Yeah, good call, Robin. We partner with First Southwest Bank for that. And again, there's more details on our website, but it allows you to pay for your low interest loan and your utility bill all together in one statement. Just makes it easier. All right, let's see. A lot of good questions here, trying to keep track. What about the heat pump water heaters for replacing a boiler for the in-floor heating?
Yeah, it won't work. Again, the output temperature is really what's going to drive whether the system works for you or not. But no.
No,
I think
volume as well.
Yeah, really, because what you're doing on a heat pump water heater is heating 40 gallons to, I think we can max those out at about 150. Once that's gone, then you're not going to have the in-floor heat. So yeah, it's unfortunately not working. I think some people are playing around with boilers connected to storage tanks and things like that, but a lot of it's just not working great. So I think there'll be more to come on the in-floor heat pump side of things, but for now the options are fairly limited.
All right, here's an interesting one. HFCs are a greenhouse gas. They're 1,000 times more than CO2. Colorado will be moving away from HFCs. When will that be happening with heat pumps?
Yeah, the industry's working on it. They're moving away. The rest of the world has already done it. We're still on 410 or R410A, which is, it's not great. One of the things, I mean, it's kind of ironic, but one of the things they're actually looking at is propane as a refrigerant. So yeah, the industry is shifting away from that. That has been called out. They know it's not a good look, so they're working on it. I would say we see movement here in the US probably in the next 3 years, but not on the current lineup that's out there. You don't have too many options on kind of low GHG. So
Another oddball one is CO2 actually being used as a refrigerant, but exotic, not quite feasible.
All right. What do you recommend for a relatively new home, 5 years old, with propane appliances of the same age? Is there a good way to get a value out of those appliances for their remaining useful life?
I'll jump in real quick here. I think it would beg the question, are they 80% efficiency on the combustion appliances for your furnace, boiler, what have you? Or are they, sealed combustion, high efficiency units? I think that would kind of steer the answer. So let's just say 80%ers. The math is there to get your payback, to go immediately just get rid of it, get off of propane. I would say if it was, you got the infrastructure, they're not that old, you keep in good, maintenance, they're in good shape, and they're the high efficiency units, that's where the payback would not quite shake out. And then I would say, hey, stay on top of the maintenance, maybe improve upon the building envelope to try to reduce your base load so that equipment's running less. And then, just keep using that equipment for the next however many years until the financial feasibility kind of tips the scales. Heat pumps are cheaper, more efficient. And all of a sudden the propane costs are going up and you kind of hit that tipping point, then you make the leap. But otherwise propane's got to go. It's so expensive. So
yeah, it's wild. It's wild. It's only going to get worse. I think the one thing we did mention on the furnaces too is you can buddy those systems up, so you can keep your existing furnace in place, bring a heat pump air handler in next to it, and get a smart control on it that actually sees the outdoor temperature. As soon as that outdoor temperature hits a low point, it would switch over to your propane, but it would just operate on the heat pump for probably something like 85% of the heating season, if not more. So you can reuse it, but yeah, like Robin said, you do the math on the propane, it's just not making sense anymore.
All right. For an area of 100 square feet, what size ductless system do you think would be needed?
Yeah, that's
small.
Yeah, real small. So
real small.
The smallest common heat pump system that we're finding is about 9,000 BTU, which is going to cover Robin, 700 or 800 square feet of mildly insulated space. So you can.
I mean, I've seen the half ton, but to that
you can
point,
use those, but it will be overkill. But that being said, if you need it, yeah, go for it. I would say put it in. You can also look into, they make now a window mounted heat pump option. It's kind of this U-shaped thing that I think comes in something like a 1/4 ton or something like that may work out for you. But yeah, I'd say go for the heat pump, and if nothing else, you can drop another zone somewhere else in the future.
Yeah, if you did get the half ton, because these things, again, the compressors are inverter driven, they're just constantly variable, they can ramp down. I mean, there's like still a minimum threshold that they will hit, but they can ramp down considerably, ramp up as needed. So there is that, but that is a pretty, small space to try to condition.
Here's a good one. This one is my house as well. Our primary living area has a ceiling height of 24 feet. How do we keep the heat towards the floor?
Robin.
Air stratification. Get some ceiling fans. So if you have ceiling fans, great. Be sure to operate them. And then, of course, you want to go with the, fan rotation in the winter, and then the summer is going to be different. So that's literally, it's called air stratification. So, I mean, if you had a thermal image, you could see, of course, the hot air is rising, just like my hands. And then, so yeah, unfortunately, if you got like a loft up there, they're always getting, ran out with heat, but it's always circling back to having those ceiling fans to just keep that airflow stirred up. And I mean, that's literally what the air is looking like, and it's going to go back down, and then just kind of keep that circulation going. Otherwise, it's going to get kind of stagnant, cold at the bottom, and then the hot's going to rise up.
Yeah, so that's winter up, summer down. Think about it that way.
All right, so for older houses that only have 100 amp services, would a large heat pump need a larger service? And are there any rebates for service upgrades?
Yeah, so again, IRA, the Interest Reduction Act coming out next year will have incentives for panel upgrades. So keep an eye on that. The thing to do is get an electrical contractor out there to do a load calc on what's actually connected out there. And then they can look at the spec sheet on the heat pump and see its KW rating, so how much demand it's going to pull. And that's going to be based on any electric backup or anything like that that's in there, and the highest output that it could do. It'll typically cruise way below that, but we want to make sure we're sizing the service appropriately for a heat pump. And even if you do have to do a panel upgrade on some of these things, I think it's well worth the investment to be able to bring a heat pump in and correct some situations that you may have in the home there.
You can also plan accordingly too. John mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act. This got to be, let's see here, $4,000 rebate max for a panel breaker box upgrade. So I would say plan accordingly. Like, think big and just say, okay, X amount of years down the road, will I have an EV? Like, do I want to get an electric vehicle? Like, you're not going to get that with a 100 amp panel. So you might want to just say, like, let's dream big here and kind of roll it all into one comprehensive project, looking 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and, spring for the 200 amp panel. And again, that payback period is there. So, that upfront investment is going to sting a little bit, but you're definitely going to be recouping that on down the road.
Okay, here's another one. 3 heat pump quotes for our house included a furnace in every quote. Is there a reason that quotes are including furnaces when the right heat pump will go down to negative 20 degrees? We're an older house with an existing central air furnace.
Get a 4th quote. Honestly, contractors may not be comfortable with what they're proposing. They may not be comfortable with the situation there or knowledgeable enough. So they are kind of playing it safe. And so, I would say potentially look at the quality install list that we have on our site, and reach out to their contractor. And some of your first questions may just be, are you comfortable sizing out a system that doesn't need backup heat on it?
I think that's circling back to the sentiment of they don't work, and when it gets cold. So they want to hedge their bets, throw a furnace in there, and they got their backup, and then it's kind of their bases are covered. So it's just a matter of getting in front of the right person and getting another bid.
Okay. On new construction, is it one unit that works air to air and air to water, or do you need separate units?
Separate.
Yep.
Separate units doing different jobs.
Yeah.
So kind of pick one or the other, and plan your system out accordingly.
All right, another question. I can actually answer this one amazingly. Will your rebates continue next year, or are they dependent on federal rebates? And they're not. So our rebates will be continuing. There'll just be our rebates in addition to whatever ends up coming down the pike with the Inflation Reduction Act and other bills. Let's see. Are the ductless systems thermostatically controlled?
Are the ductless systems thermostatically? So most of them are now coming with smart thermostats on them. So that would be your control system on that. So it's going beyond that. And it's going to be one per zone too. So it's a little bit different than what you would see out of a typical kind of dummy thermostat for a furnace.
All right. Can you comment on the overall cost effectiveness of CCASHPs with solar PV installations?
Yep. So I think they couple together great. So air source heat pumps, or just heat pumps in general, and solar, you have 2 options. One is you overproduce and then send it in the bank, and maybe you use it, or we pay you back. We pay that off in April at our wholesale rate, or you use it as you produce it. And that's really our preference, is that we're not having a bunch of overproduction out there. So heat pumps are a great way to take advantage of that. If you imagine what's happening there is you are using it at about 12.5 cents right away, or you can bank it and you're only getting paid off at about 4.3. So I think heat pumps are a great way to take advantage if you are overproducing on your solar system right now.
Okay. There's another question on solar here. What is the impact of future solar panels on the choice of a heat pump?
Yeah, not much, honestly. You know, it's either the power is going to come from the grid or it's going to come from your local production. So you can just go ahead and size that system out appropriately for the home's needs. And then if you don't have enough solar production to cover that, then you're adding in the future, and that's all fine. So yeah, I wouldn't have your heat pump decision be affected by any kind of solar production that's happening on site there.
All right, I'm sure this is a comment. It says, we have a Mitsubishi mini split heat pump system, Mr. Slim, that was installed 7 or 8 years ago. It cools great, but the heat is reasonable, but not ideal. Have the mini split systems improved significantly in recent years that would justify a new system?
I think they have, and then they can go back. There should be a energy guide on the unit, and if not, they can kind of look up the model number and then pull up the old specs, the old spec sheet, hopefully, and then they can kind of compare and contrast. Like, okay, this is where I'm at, my old unit. You know, what's it looking like these days? Do I want to make the leap? And then another thing too is, have you had the thing serviced? They do still require maintenance. You know, those fins on the units can kind of get caked up with just dust, debris, what have you. And then that heat exchange capability gets hindered because any debris, any of that stuff is literally an insulation layer on that stuff. So it can't, you know, get rid of heat. It can't, you know, draw in heat or what have you based off of which one. So it might just be as simple as a service call or doing more maintenance. You might breathe some more life into that system as well. So I would say do that if you haven't been, before you're just like writing it off and like you're on to the next shiny new thing, which may not be the best course of action. So just an order of operations there.
Yeah, and I'll add too, you may be able to just replace that outdoor unit and leave the indoor system in place. That may be your bottleneck, is that the outdoor is not performing as high as it could. So yeah, I'd say engage a contractor, get it cleaned up, and then kind of see what the performance does from there.
So here's a question I know we get a lot. Who are the good contractors who can replace old system and install new systems? And how long do installations typically take?
Robin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, circle back to the qualified installer list on the website. You know, it's by all means, it's not completely exhaustive of every guy in the area, but that's people that we do, you know, work with more so than others. We see rebates coming back with their name on it, you know, as far as the installer goes. So I don't know if that answers the question. Sorry, can you reread it? I went off on a tangent.
It was, who are the good installers, which I think you covered. And then the second part of the question was, how long does an installation usually take?
The installation, you know, could, depending on the size of the system, could be 1 day, 2 days. You know, you're doing one zone, you're doing a whole house retrofit. So it's just going to vary based on the size of the system.
Yeah, what that installation looks like is power, right? So panel upgrade, run power if you need, you know, or panel upgrade if you need it, run power to the locations where we're gonna have outdoor and indoor units. It's mount up that outdoor unit, mount up your indoor units, get power to both of them, and then run the refrigerant line in between them. And that includes tapping holes through walls and things like that. So yeah, it could depend on the size of the system, like Robin says, but that's about what it looks like. Yeah.
Here's one. You may have answered this. Sorry, I came late. But do all cold weather heat pumps have a heating strip or go to gas?
Yeah, so not all of them do, but they should. And what most of them will have the backup heat for is they actually run in a defrost mode or de-ice mode. And even in the winter, it'll actually run in reverse. So it'll run in cooling mode just to de-ice that outdoor unit. So it'll push a bunch of heat into it. Once it's defrosted, then it'll go back to heating mode. But what it's doing is blowing cold air into your home. And so that's when the backup electric resistance heat does need to come on there. What we're seeing is that it's really not that costly. It comes on for so little bit of time that it just doesn't matter. And then you also do have some systems out there, mostly central furnaces, that'll have electric resistance backup in the air handler that can come on if it's needed. But again, that's why we're trying to push people towards, cold climate rated heat pumps, is we can do away with a lot of that electric resistance backup, having to go that direction.
Is it possible to install heat pumps over time? Like just get an outdoor unit that's big enough capacity to add additional heat pumps to later?
Yeah, Robin, I think you mentioned this before. You wanna hit it?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible, right? But the best order of operations, so it's kind of like, if if I understand the question right, are you speaking of like, one outside unit, like, okay, 2 inside units, and I'm going to want a third or a fourth, and you can tack it on later, possibly. But as far as financial feasibility goes, it might just be best to just rip the Band-Aid off and just go like, I know what my end goal is. Let's just try to do that. And then that kind of circles back to playing the numbers right, getting the rebate, and maybe using some LPA on bill financing as a financial vehicle to kind of help foot the bill and accommodate that. That might be a better game plan than trying to, that, or one option would be, okay, 1 outside unit with 2 indoor units on like the north side of the house. And then, 2 years later, you get another outside unit to do the south side of the house, or something like that, vice versa. First floor, second floor. That might be a better way to play it. So there's a couple of different approaches just based off of what your end goal is, and kind of layout of your house, things like that. So just get creative.
So we have a hard stop in just a couple of minutes here. We've already gone about 10 minutes over time. What we can do is, if your question hasn't been answered, we can just get back to you. We have your email address. I think we've answered most of them, but just try and get 2 more in. Let's do this. Are there any high-low mini split systems that are economical, i.e. heat from the bottom up and cool from the top down?
So a heat pump system has to run in one mode. You cannot have, it's a little bit of a misnomer, but yeah, it has to run either heating mode or cooling mode. So you cannot have both coming out of one indoor unit. They do make commercial units that'll do that, but when we're talking home systems here, has to be one mode or the other.
Hillary, I saw one pop up that I'd like to answer from Karen about when heat pumps go to different refrigerants, can a heat pump I install now be retrofitted? No. So the compressors are for the certain refrigerants because of the different compressions based off of the refrigerants. So that is a common enough question. I wanted to kind of jump on and answer. The best thing is to just retrofit a whole new system, or try to ride the one system you got through its useful lifespan.
And then the last one we'll answer is, how long does it take for a ductless system to heat up 1,000 square feet?
That's going to vary, and that kind of circles back to the manual J load calculation. 1,000 square feet. I mean, what are your windows? What are your insulation values in your walls, your crawl space, your attic? So I think the better approach would be, what is my system, or excuse me, what is my space uniquely, and then doing a heat load calculation to really tailor make the answer for you, to tailor made the approach for your specific space.
And Hillary, if I could grab one more just to kind of drive the point home here of kind of what we're talking about. So this is question is, you said the electric resistance translates to 1 watt to it's 3.14 to BTUs. What are the heat pump translations? So what does a heat pump do? So when we're talking heat pumps, we're talking 400 to 500% efficiency. So take that 3.142 number, multiply times 5, and that's what we're getting out of the heat pump system here. And that's why we're so excited about these things is, we're typically seeing, gas, propane, less than 100% efficiency. We're seeing baseboard at 100%. We're seeing heat pumps at 500+%. And that's just, it's wild. And again, it's because it's moving heat, not creating heat. And that's why it's so effective to run these things. And your follow-up question here, SEER, so that's seasonal energy efficiency rating. That's really our cooling. So they're taking a system and running it for an entire cooling season, and they're looking at energy in, cooling back out. HSPF is our heating season performance factor. Same thing, energy in, heat back out is what we're measuring on that.
All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging on 12 minutes longer than our scheduled programming. Again, this has been recorded, and we will also have the slides, and those will all go out to you in an email tomorrow. Robin, John, thank you very much for your informative presentation. I learn things every time I listen to you guys talk. Their contact details are on the screen right now. So if you guys do have some follow-up questions that are not answered by the email tomorrow, feel free to email or call. Stay tuned. We'll try and have more information sessions like this moving forward as well. And if you guys have any ideas for things you'd like to see, please feel free to email us as well, and we'd be happy to put on something by demand. So with that, I will close this off, and thank you everyone for your time, and I hope you guys have a great evening.
Take care.